President Biden spending his last Thanksgiving in public service on Nantucket. And when he returns, he will spend the next 50 days trying to cement his legacy. It would be sad, of course, if it wasn't so scary that that's all he cares about right now. The last few weeks have taught us he is willing to do anything, no matter how reckless, to get apparent wins and adulation. He's telling his cabinet secretaries to spend as much money as possible. He's radically changing policy in Ukraine to encourage dramatic escalation. In fact, we had to do segments about new threats by Putin to use nuclear weapons. And he effectively blackmailed Israel into a ceasefire with Hezbollah. That ceasefire is really a 60-day pause, and it puts the United States in a terrible position of trying to police Hezbollah and Israel. But it gives Joe Biden a Rose Garden ceremony, and he wants more of those.
Today's announcement is a critical step in advancing that vision. And so I applaud the crazy decision made by the leaders of Lebanon and Israel to end the violence. It reminds us that peace is possible. Say that again, peace is possible.
Say that again. Perhaps that was in the teleprompter. Kind of fitting. Joe Biden, one promising to be the adult in the room. He had 50 years of foreign policy experience, and after 4 years, Joe Biden will leave office. Say it again. Totally humiliated. Joining us now, Mica Soellner, congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, David Drucker, senior writer for The Dispatch. David, you've covered these sort of lame duck ends of presidencies before. Is what we're seeing anything new?
No, not new at all. What you always see from presidents in their final days, either because they lost re-election or they're termed out, or of course Biden here is a special case, they do everything they can to finish the unfinished business, to try and lock in as many of their priorities as they can before they leave, and to work on their legacy. It's part of human nature. It's part of political nature. Yep. And just from a nuts and bolts policy standpoint, presidents try to maximize every last ounce of their tenure that they can to get as many wins as they can, as they see it from their perspective.
I think you said it great. From their perspective, this is how Joe Biden views what a win looks like. Whether the American people do, we'll see. Mica, there is this other part of this, right? Because very rarely, I guess the only other time would be Al Gore in recent history, did we have a vice president who ran and lost still in office, sort of also trying to cement her legacy and also as the leader of their party. Didn't work out so well for Al Gore. Here's more of Kamala Harris's address.
You gave all that you could to support our campaign. Because of your efforts, get this, we raised an historic $1.4 billion, almost $1.5 billion from grassroots supporters alone, the most in presidential campaign history.
Mica, how is this Joe Biden's legacy run, Kamala Harris trying to cement her position in the party, playing with Democrats on Capitol Hill, senior Democrats around the country?
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking to Democrats across the board in the House and Senate, and they're doing the best job they can to try to spin the results of the election to something that's in their favor, right? So we're seeing, House Democrats saying they overperformed the top of the ticket, and not a lot of news. No one's really talking about Harris anymore, which is the most interesting part. Minus the incumbents that actually lost their seats, blaming her for their failures to win re-election. But it's also interesting to see that Harris is talking about the amount of money that they raised, historic amounts. Democrats were saying this all cycle, and they still happen to lose, the trifecta.
Yeah, and so now the direction of the Democratic Party is here. David, real quick, just in the last minute or so that we have, liberal political activist Michael Moore isn't buying what Biden is trying to sell before he leaves office so far. Moore writes in his blog, landmines? Joe, seriously, this is your legacy? Talking about giving landmines to Ukraine. This is how you want to go out in a blaze of horror? Like if Joe's got to go, we all got to go with him right into World War III. Is this Joe Biden sort of in every possible way going it alone against the Democratic establishment, against the progressives, and certainly against Donald Trump?
I don't think so. And I think Moore was a little bit ridiculous there. You know, Republican hawks have been calling on Biden to get Ukraine more lethal weapons and give them permission to use those weapons for several months, if not more than a couple of years. So in some ways, and this is pretty typical of Joe Biden, it's late to the party, but it's what a lot of his critics who support Ukraine have been calling for. And
that's what we heard from John Bolton. I hear you there. I got to get one last thing in. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.